Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt. And have you ever wanted a job but wasn't exactly sure how to go and get that job? Well, I'm telling you that you are selling yourself, or you need to sell yourself, and in order to do so, you need to think like a salesperson. That means learn to plan out a sales call. So we'll talk about that here over the next few minutes. All great salespeople really know that there are very specific steps that need to be done in order to be effective in selling. And salespeople, as you've probably heard me say before, generally speaking, are the backbone of any organization. They're the people who are making new concepts, new contacts, and connecting with people to build relationships, hopefully for over the lifetime. And isn't that exactly what you're doing when you're looking for a new job? Well, if you could think like a salesperson, you could be able to get any job that you really want. You know, obviously you've got to have the right qualifications, but if you know that you are in a place where you could learn the skills to do the job that you really want to do, and you can prove that, you could get your foot in the door to at least get yourself an interview that helps the potential employer make that decision. Well, that's the same thing that salespeople have to consider on a daily basis. And it really is all about really successfully planning a sales call out. You probably may not know this, or you probably do know this, but the most successful businesses don't just happen because people are just acting on the moment. Most of them. Most of those most successful businesses go through a process where they're constantly planning things out. It's the strategy that helps an organization be successful and maintain market share and dive into new markets. And that's exactly what we need to be doing on a personal basis. We're always managing our own personal brand, whether or not you realize it or not. So learn how to be more effective by doing what some of the most successful people do. So great successful salespeople often make 6 or 7 figures a year, and it's because they really do the legwork beforehand. And I call that planning the sales call. And that really is about getting pre-call information in order to find out about who you're going to be interviewing with, or who you need to be interviewing with, and finding out about the organization, finding out about the values. And it really is about knowing what you need to know in order to be able to communicate what you have to offer in an effective way. So you've got to really be clear on setting your objectives, being able to figure out what your minimum objective is and your maximum objective. The minimum objective, I want to find out if there are any jobs available and who potential candidates look like. Maximum objective, I'm going to secure a job interview and gain that job and earn that job because I've successfully sold myself. So you really have to be able to gain the buyer's respect and confidence. Same thing in a job interview. And so you have to really be able to understand what's important to that prospect or manager, and then be able to meet your objectives because they're in alignment with what he or she feels is of value. So here's the process. It's really pretty much 3 steps in the planning process. 1, gather information about the prospect and the firm. 2, setting objectives for the call. And then 3, making the appointment. And so each of those steps may not be as easy as you think because there are other people there that may not be the people that you need to talk to, but you've got to be able to go through those people in order to get to who you want to talk about. Obtaining pre-call information really will help you increase your probability of meeting the organization's needs and developing that long-term relationship. That's what we want, whether it be for a job or whether it be to be able to sell your product or service to a company. it's the same type of deal. You need to be aware of the costs involved for collecting the information, and you've got to be able to make sure that you're updating information on a regular basis. So just because a company may not have the means to hire you right now or buy your product right now, it doesn't mean that at a later time that might be a better fit, because you've gained the knowledge, skills, experience, or the right products with the right aspects, or their needs have changed, and so you've adapted accordingly. So do know that you're going to be interviewing with at least one person, and sometimes it's multiple people if you're looking for a job, or there may be one person making that buying decision and you really need to influence that person. Here's what you really need to find out if you can, and there's lots of ways to get information these days. This is the information decade. So look for get to know who their name is, and make sure you're pronouncing it correctly. And there's a lot of different ways to find out how to pronounce a person's name, but person's name is one of the most beautiful things to that person, so don't destroy it. Honor people by saying their name correctly. Figure out their family status. Understand their education and inspiration, and so there's ways that you can do that. And so do some critical thinking and thinking about how you can figure out what their education is all about and what their aspirations are. Figure out what their interests and disinterests are. I mean, the worst thing you can do is start talking about something that really irritates somebody else. And understand their social style. There's a video on social style that I've uploaded. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. And then understand the attitude towards salespeople and your company and product. Anything can be changed, but you've got to approach things the right way. And so I'm a firm believer that if you can envision success, you can make it happen, but you still have to have the right strategy to change people's minds and influence people, and then build that long-term relationship. And that's not about manipulating people. It's about being authentic and really understanding them so that you can provide value to them. Fair enough? So your prospect is a customer, and as a customer, they are a person that has relationships. You have to understand who they report to. You've got to understand who they hang out with, their groups and their group norms. And you've got to understand your product or service and what products or services they're currently using, and then be able to help them evaluate the effectiveness of your product or service, or if you're in an interview, So you got to understand what's there and then be able to communicate it in a way that helps them really see the value in it. As you continue to hear me say, we're our own salespeople, and if you want to get a job that you truly love, you've got to be able to be the best candidate, because you can't assume that you're the only person they're interviewing. They may have 100 people on their list, and you want to do everything you can to be the right fit, and you do that by really planning out your sales call or your interview or your attempt to get an interview. So be aware of the organization itself. Things to take a look at and research are the demographics, the type of organization, the size of the organization, the number of locations, the kinds of products and services that they have, the financial position and the future goals of the organization, the culture of the organization, who their customers are, type of customer that they have, benefits that they seek from your product and service. And it's also important to understand who your prospects' competitors are and how they differ in their business approaches. Can you imagine doing the research not only on the company that you are wanting to work for, but you also understand who their competition is, or you want to do business with them as a salesperson for a business or a business owner. So you've got to understand who their competitors are. You've got to make sure that you know the nuances in how competitors' approaches to business differs from your own approach to business, and be aware of the strategic position. So you got to think like a business leader and be able to articulate it. And can you see how doing your homework helps make you be seen as a more credible person? And you have to be a credible person. And you have to be able to add value all the time. Being on autopilot doesn't make you the best candidate for any job. So you also need to be aware of suppliers of that company. Do they have many? How happy are they with their suppliers? And what were the reasons that they were doing business with those suppliers, or why did they choose the candidates that they chose for any reason? And what kind of dissatisfaction does that organization have with suppliers or products? So lots of things go into really doing your homework, if you will, for pre-call information. What is the current buying situation of the organization? What are the strengths and weaknesses of potential competitors? Sometimes you have to figure out who you're competing with too. Sometimes you have to really understand how the person that you're interviewing with, or the person that's making decision, fits into the organizational structure. What are their roles in the decision-making process? Are they making the final decision, or do they report to a committee, or do they pass on information and make a recommendation? Who are influential adversaries? Who carries influence and may be opposed to you? And so being able to answer those questions in a thoughtful way. You can't be all things to all people, but you at least be able to need to be able to strategize a reason why they may not understand you, or a reason why you really would be of value, or help clear up a misunderstanding that's been up in place for maybe a long while. So you also have to understand, if you're in sales, their policies and procedures concerning salespeople, sales visits, and purchasing contracts. So you got to be able to get this information, and that really means doing your homework and digging in a little bit. Very often we have analysis paralysis. We can get paralyzed by making a decision or finding information. Sometimes things seem huge for us. You eat an elephant one bite at a time, so you just got to sit down and create your plan of action, and then go down your list and make sure that the strategy makes sense, and go for it. There's lots of areas to get information. There are sales portals and online database information. There are selling centers where a sales team interacts with a prospect. The internet is a wealth of information, and most companies have their own websites, and most professionals are at least on LinkedIn. Some of them actually have Facebook pages or other social media where you can get a look at who they are. And so these days it's pretty easy to find information about individuals and companies, but you really have to take time to do your homework. So sometimes secretaries or receptionists, administrative assistants, they'll share information with you. And that means you've got to really practice positive interpersonal skills, and ask questions the right way to the right people. Sometimes non-competing salespeople will help inform you of what some of the nuances are with doing business with that people. So a lot of different areas to get information about a company or about an individual. Trade shows, directories, current customers. Sometimes they hire consultants that work with them, or sometimes there's information in U.S. government portals or commercial service market research libraries. So there are tons and tons of ways to find out information about companies. So once you have all that pre-call information, then you've got to set your call objectives. You have to really take a look at the information that you've gathered. You need to be able to understand the type of relationship that you want to establish, and then create your plan of action. Really consider the firm's goals. Look at their sales team's goals and other types of goals. And when you do so, you have to be SMART. And you've probably heard the acronym SMART. Well, S stands for specific, what the salesperson hopes to accomplish, what the objectives of the target are. So if that's you trying to sell them a product, you have to be very aware of what you're trying to accomplish and have a strategy, very specific strategy to do it. And it's the same thing with job interviews. If you know that you want to get a job, you've got to be very, very specific and envision yourself in that position, but be very clear on what it would take to get there. And then you need to break it down into measurable goals that can be objectively evaluated. Show up for job interview at 10 a.m. Good start. Be able to articulate previous experiences with specific examples. Check. Whatever that may look like. Or be able to identify the current competitor's weaknesses and show 5 reasons why your product is better than theirs. Check. Achievable. So another thing is you'll lose motivation if it's not achievable, first of all. And challenge is good, so don't be lazy. But do really consider cultural influence and recognize that your goals may be too lofty. I probably couldn't quit my job today and then go and apply for a CEO job unless I've had other jobs similar to a CEO. But could I get my foot in the door at the highest job possible with my degree and experience, and then work my way up in the organization? Sure, absolutely. And then this time-based is really important. So make sure that you're connecting your objectives to specific times for achievement, and that they're achievable, of course. So here's some example of sales calls objectives. I'm going to read these to you. Have the prospect agree to a demonstration on the product. Schedule a meeting to further discuss the proposal. Do a complete survey of the buyer's requirements. Inform the buyer of the innovative changes incorporated into the product, and convince the buyer to endorse the product to the buying committee. Instill confidence and trust in the product and service, and initiate the paperwork to consider as a future vendor. So those are some specific goals that you could make. Here's some multiple call objectives to consider. Primary call objective: actual goal of a salesperson hopes to achieve. So maybe it's to just introduce yourself. Maybe it's much more than that, and it should be much more than that. If it's your primary objective, is to build a long-term relationship where the person continues to buy products or services. The minimum call objective, and maybe that is just be able to introduce yourself and get to know that person. If everything doesn't go well, at least that minimum call objective is made, and then you can create future opportunities with that person. Sometimes it takes longer for other people to develop a relationship or develop trust, or maybe they really are too busy. So have a minimum call objective and have a primary call objective. You must be optimistic. Really be able to think about positive outcomes that could occur, and just believe they're going to happen. Sometimes that belief gets you going, and don't hold any intention other than you're going to accomplish your goal. Don't be so set on the objective that if it doesn't happen, it's going to ruin your day. You never know what kind of seed that you're going to plant for secondary calls. And so sometimes it might just be wise to schedule a secondary call and then create new objectives. So for the fact that you may need to work with this individual or call on this individual time, you've got to keep good records. You can't always remember everything, but good records help set you up for success. Make necessary adjustments as you do long-term calls. Prepare yourself for each call. You gotta be not lazy about things, but be proactive about things, and make sure that you're preparing yourself and others for your call, and then really be very clear on what the value proposition is. And so that's a written statement about the proposed product and the solution that it provides for that person, even if that is your is obtaining the job. What kind of value are you going to be giving to the organization? And then make sure that you are, whether or not you're in sales or not, that you're keeping a detailed call objectives list with call results. And so you're documenting the dates that you met, what you talked about, what your goals were, and what you actually obtained. So goals for buyers, generally speaking, are on-time delivery, quality product, competitive pricing, proper packaging and paperwork, technical supportive service, quality of sales, level of technological innovation, and good emergency response. So you have to always be providing constant value. How are you doing that? Figure that out. These are things that go into your strategy. Then once you've got all the pre-call information, then you got to do it. And so make an appointment. Make sure you're talking to the right person. Focus on receptivity. The person who is willing to listen and give you the needed valuable information. Really listen to dissatisfaction. When people talk about what their problems and dissatisfactions are, have a plan for that. And then there's a lot of power in focus. That really is the key to success in anything. Where you focus your time and energy, that's where you get your results. So if you recognize what the problems are that your product or service solves, or what you can bring to the organization, that focus will help you be able to help the receiver of your information really be able to determine whether or not you are right for the company, or whether or not your product is right for the company. So make the appointment. Find the right time that works mutually for both of you. It's also got to be the right place. If there's a lot going on, or people can't give you their undivided attention, you're probably not going to sway the person to make a decision in your favor. Very often video conferencing is the best thing a person can do. A lot of companies are using Skype. It's free to be able to see the person's body expression and have the one-on-one that really helps, dig deeper into understanding the benefits of the product or service, or to be able to get to know the job candidate. Webcasting and virtual sales calls also happen, and there's lots of conferencing software available that companies use. There's GoToMeeting, WebEx, and so just to name a few, Zoom. Google has a Google Hangout, so I like to use those for my seminars. So lots of companies use different resources to help communicate face-to-face with person, but they do it in a virtual way. Be able to cultivate relationships with the subordinates of people. You can't talk down to an administrative assistant, to a decision maker. Really build a meaningful relationship. They probably are a screener or a barrier for that manager. So being just respectful to those people, being authentic, not manipulative, really can help you be seen as someone who that potential influencer of that manager or decision maker has. They may be in your favor. I really have a good feeling about this guy, boss. Or, wow, he seems like a nice guy. I could work with him, boss. They don't have to do those things, but they probably are being asked by a smart manager, how did that go? Sometimes there are just people who are barracudas where they feel like his or her job is to screen and not allow you to approach the manager. Maybe that's how the company works. So you've got to be able to have a strategy how to work through the screen, go over the screen, or even go under the screen. Sometimes there are backdoor arrangements where you can connect with people and meet by chance. So you kind of have to be a little bit scrappy and think about how you can create success. If you truly are a person that can add value, you can show your creativity and initiative in that process. So telephoning for appointments, do not make the sales call over the phone. You have to meet in person. So set time where you can get that person's undivided attention and prepare for it. And be ready to answer questions that anticipate objectives and figure out how you're going to respond. For example, maybe you're getting an objection from the administrative assistant. I'm sorry, but the manager is busy now. Your response: what I have to say will take only a few minutes. Should I call back later, or could I set up an appointment? So sometimes busy right now means that right now they really are busy. Managers spend a lot of time doing a lot of different things, and so you can't always get instantaneous results. So don't assume that they're trying to blow you off. Try to find a way that you can make another appointment. Administrative assistant says, we already have that product. And your response could be something like, oh, that's fine. I want to talk to the manager about some new features designed for companies like yours. So that could help get your foot in the door. I take care of that particular task. That's fine. I'd like to speak to the manager about the total service. Help take it to the next level. Objection from the prospect. Can't you mail me the information? Very often things that get mailed don't get looked at, so you really have to get their attention. So I never recommend lying, but do find a way to actually get a personal visit. You might say, our systems are tailored to meet the needs of each customer, so a personal visit would not be most effective. I think you'll be glad that you made time to do this. I promise you I'll make it worth your while. What do you want to talk about? It's difficult to explain over the phone. I can demonstrate it to you in person. I think you'll be pleased that you made time. You'd just be wasting your time. I'm really not interested. The general objection is hiding a specific objection. Probe for the specific objection. So really be able to ask more questions about that. Can you tell me about what you're currently using? Might be a good start. Or what is the person doing now? Or why did that person leave that job? And then you can be able to follow up with something that will go, oh, this person really does have this solution. We had that product once and I didn't like it. Really ask more probing questions to find out why they weren't happy with that particular product or service, and dig a little bit deeper. So you've got to make a good impression and build credibility. You really have to take time to uncover what your customers' true needs are, or the organization's true needs are, and be able to anticipate the questions and their concerns. And then practice makes perfect. Really spend time practicing your presentation so that you can help really clearly know what you're going to say, and be able to build some credibility. And seating is important. Really spending time to get to know who your potential customer is, or really planting seeds about the fact that you've done your homework and you really understand what's important to that person. All right, so I've talked a lot about the pre-call sales information. This is really good to know if you want to get a job that you truly love. It's about doing your homework and really showing you're the right person for that job. Or if you want to do business as a salesperson with a new company, you really have to know what you need to know in order to show that you can provide that added value for that organization. Well, that's obtaining pre-call information and why it's so important. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I thank you so much for your valuable time. Have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.